Man, I just love these podcasts. And I love talking and I love sharing with you. And I'm just so glad that we have this time each week. I'm going to try to share a little bit more with you more than when I have been. I'm going to try to share more often. So you can try to prepare for that, which is exciting. Sorry, I'm moving around a little bit. I'm going to get comfy. I actually haven't gotten comfy yet, so I'm just getting some blankets. It's nighttime, actually. Everest is asleep, which is nice. I just got all caught up, mostly caught up with work. We had some changes that I had to fix. So I'm excited to share a little bit more often. I actually just fell asleep, and then my husband called me asking a question. He was in a different room, and I was about to go to sleep, but I decided to stop working. It's late at night, and take this opportunity while Everest is asleep and Caleb's in the other room to just put together another podcast for you. And I'm really excited about this podcast. I'm not sure how long it will actually be, just because there's going to be a lot of details I may or may not remember in this podcast. I'm going to be talking a little bit. I'm just going to go through a day in the life in Spain, and maybe I'll throw in some random stories or whatnot. So, yeah. And living in Spain, has its perks. But I also was very homesick. Well, no. The first semester, I was not homesick at all. And I was so glad that I did not only do half of a year, like one semester, because it would not have been enough time for me. And I knew that going in, that I wanted to spend a large amount of time there. And I was very glad that I spent a whole year. But by the end of the year, boy, was I ready to go home. I was ready to get back to the United States and just get back to family, get back to what my life was like before being abroad. Get back to hearing English all the time instead of Spanish. Yeah. I might do a day in the life. Well, they're kind of similar, but I guess I'll first do I'll do a day in the life when I lived with a family, and then a day in the life when I lived in an apartment. But my life was different when I lived in the different situations, because I was working the second semester and I was not working the first one. There were quite a few differences. Hopefully I can explain them correctly. So I would wake up around 7, and granted, 7 a.m., but I just want to throw it out there that we have a 7-hour time difference. So there's 7 hours behind or ahead of people in the United States. So if it's 1 p.m., then it's 7 p.m. there. They're 7 hours ahead of us. So, yeah, that is a weird thing to get used to. But what I did learn was it's easier to go from the United States to, like, Spain, but it's harder to go from, like, Spain to the United States. You're much more jet lagged when I came back. I was much more jet lagged because now you're going back 7 hours. So when it's, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. here, when you should be going to bed, I'm, thinking it's, what time would it be? 8? Shoot. That would be 2 a.m. So you would need to go to bed like 7 hours earlier to go to bed at 7 and 8, which is like, noon that day. So, yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's just a lot harder to go back instead of forward, apparently. Someone I once knew said that the best way, now I've never tried this, so don't hold me to this. The best way to get rid of jet lag is to ground. It's like called grounding. When you first get to a place when you're new and you will possibly be jet lagged, you go to the ground and your bare feet, and then you stand on the ground with your bare feet, and apparently it's supposed to sync you up. You stand there for a while. Google it. But apparently it works for people. I have never tried it. I will try it next time I go abroad. But I had heard this tidbit after I had been abroad, and I just haven't really been abroad back much since that time. Yeah. So, yeah, that's called grounding, and apparently it syncs your body to the time frame of where you're at. I don't really know how there's science behind it and what they think, but yeah. Try it if you're going abroad. So, I would wake up around 7. I think we started school at 8 a.m., so we would need to get ready, and often the family wasn't up, so just my roommate and I. Oh my gosh, I'm yawning forever a million times. Sorry. We would get up, get ready. I would not, you can't take very long showers here, so I kind of got scarred from this. And I brought it back to the United States, and I still kind of am somewhat affected by this and somewhat not. So, there was a drought in Spain. I think I already said, no, I didn't explain it. There was a drought when I was there. And, so they were trying to conserve water. It was expensive, all this and that. Plus it was COVID. Oh my gosh, I was just falling asleep. So I do not know what I was just saying just there. That is so funny. I literally was just falling asleep. I'm going to finish this podcast at a later date because I am falling asleep. I need to go to bed, but I will continue this. Yes. Oh my gosh, I listened to that before I continue. That's so funny. I was falling asleep. I was telling you a story and falling asleep. That is insane. I can't believe it. I said, and it was COVID at the time. It was not COVID at the time. It was 2011 and 2012. So funny. I can't believe I was falling asleep. Yeah, so they were like conserving water. They had to because it was a drought, not COVID. I don't know. I think I was starting to like dream. I was dreaming. I started dreaming. So, because I do remember starting to fall asleep and thinking COVID, but that had nothing to do with COVID. And I knew I said something weird. So funny. Okay, so yeah, they had to conserve water because they were in a drought. So you could only do like 5-minute showers, and the water, it wasn't enough time to like for the water to warm up. So the water was freezing cold all year round. And because so what I meant to say was you only get a 5-minute shower. The water would shut off after 5 minutes. It was like on a timer or something, or the family just turned off the water. So you could shower for 5 minutes, but that wasn't not enough time for the water to get warm. So you were always taking a freezing, ice cold shower every single time. So I picked up this like crazy habit of only taking like less than 5-minute showers because you didn't even want to be in there for 5 minutes. It was ice cold. You really only wanted to be in there for like 2 minutes, literally just enough to absolutely get clean and then like get out of the shower, shave everything. Don't take time to shave. That's a waste because you're going to be freezing cold and your hair's just going to grow back while you're shaving it. So you're never really going to get it down. So that's stupid. So, yeah. Anyway, that was a weird thing, but yeah, we would shower. I always showered. I think I only showered like in the morning. You only really wanted to do one shower because it was like torture every time you would shower. And in the morning early, and then you would like finish doing makeup, all that, and then we had like a little bathroom connected to our bedroom, and we had a little balcony in our bedroom, which was really cool. You could look out in the morning as the sun was rising. You could maybe see the sunrise. I can't remember if we could because it was buildings right in front of us and like long, I don't know if I really want to say alleyways, but like long streets. So as the sun was coming up, it was just kind of pretty, kind of reminds you of like Paris or something, but it was like long, tall buildings all connected. And you could sit out on your balcony as the sun, rose, but it was super echoey. So any families out for morning walks or people playing like Spanish guitars in the morning or walking through the streets or like clacking like their heels, you would hear everything and everything would echo like crazy. But I often would like read the word or journal sitting out on the patio or in my bed once I was either ready or before I got ready. And then we would typically eat breakfast by ourselves. I remember eating breakfast with my roommate Molly sometimes, and sometimes I just remember eating by myself. I don't even know if she had different classes than I, but we both had them at the same time. So I don't remember if we walked together. We must have walked together. And but I think we had different classes at different time but we had different classes, but it was all at the same time. But there were some different buildings, so I don't remember always walking with her. I do remember walking alone to school a lot. Anyway, so we would always have breakfast, but breakfast really wasn't breakfast. I think I remember Molly like skipping breakfast because all it was is like an equivalent to like a donut, what you would eat in the morning, and I just felt like that was awful for like eating a donut. I never would eat a donut in the morning in the United States. But so what they would have is like just like bread and chocolate, like something like a cookie with bread and chocolate in the middle, they were called Principe cookies. Or it would be like a croissant with chocolate inside and on top. Or like a chocolate muffin, just like a tiny little thing, like one little tiny little thing. Like, you might as well just not eat. You're eating basically sugar and bread. So don't even eat. Oh, they made this breakfast. Oh my gosh, I'm about to make this. Oh my gosh. Okay. Get a pen and paper, because you may or may not just love this recipe. So what they would do, this was a breakfast that we would have on the weekends when they were home, typically. Well, they would not always get up with us. I guess sometimes they would get up and eat with us before school, and sometimes they wouldn't, depending on what they were doing that day, because the dad was already off to work, and the mom and the baby were sometimes still sleeping, or sometimes they would be up. So, yep, I had to yawn in this podcast. So get a pen and paper. I'm about to tell you this recipe. So they would have like French bread, right? And they would cut it in half, and then they would take a tomato, like a whole tomato, and then they would puree it. So they have like those. It was the coolest thing. They have them in the United States. I'd never seen this. It's kind of like a puree, and it's like a long neck. And then there's it's like a handheld device, not a blender or anything, but it's a handheld device. And it has a long neck, and it blends it on the bottom and purees it, kind of. I need to get one of these just to make this meal. And it purees the tomatoes, and then they would take the French bread, cut it in half, so you have like a half one side, and then make it into smaller pieces, a couple, like 4 small pieces, and then they would like poke holes kind of like halfway through the bread, like push down like a fork or something, and then they would put spread olive oil on the bread. And then they would put salt on the olive oil and bread, like some salt. And then they would put the pureed tomato on there. And then more salt. And that's it. I'm pretty sure that's it. And it was so good. I can't tell you. If you don't like tomato, I want to say you would love this, but it's so good. I think the toast was toasted also. I think the French bread was toasted. Yeah, it was, because I remember it being warm. But oh my gosh, if you like tomato, you would love this. It's kind of Mediterranean, I guess Italian, Spanish type deal. I don't know where they make this, if it's only in Spain, but oh my gosh, that's my favorite breakfast. I remember bringing it home and sharing it with my family, and my family loved it. So there you go. I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy it. I'm just going to check outside. It was raining. I think it's cooler now. I might change to pants. My family was in town today, and the baby woke up. My family was in town, and so I think we're going to go do some things today as well. But the baby just woke up. So after eating a little tiny croissant for breakfast, which, as you know, in the United States, a lot of people say that breakfast is the most important meal of the day, although I feel like that saying is kind of lost in today people may or may not eat breakfast at all, whereas like my parents, back in the 60s, they ate breakfast like as the most important meal of the day, which I think we really need to get back to that, because honestly, your breakfast in my mind, you do a workout first before you eat, and then this is what I do, and then you have like your protein or whatever, and have your breakfast, and it sets the day right. And when you eat right and you eat a good amount, not too full but full enough, and it sets your day off in the right direction. You have energy, you're motivated, you're excited about where you're going and what you're doing. I don't know. But anyways, but honestly, people today like don't eat breakfast at all a lot of times. And I've noticed that. Or they'll just have like a coffee, or they won't eat anything at all, or something small, which goes along with that Spanish culture type deal. But also here people will just eat like a donut and coffee, that's horrible, but it's totally a thing. So I guess it's kind of similar, but at the same time, I don't know. I think we should really get back to a good hearty breakfast in the morning. Not too much, but my favorite breakfast ever is smashed avocado on an everything bagel with everything bagel seasoning. And if you're really feeling hungry, add an egg, like a poached egg or something. So good. And then everything bagel seasoning and salt and pepper on that. Oh my gosh, it's like my favorite breakfast in the whole world. I gave you another recipe. Like, where is this coming from? Anyways, so you eat breakfast. We would eat breakfast. Molly and I would almost always eat breakfast, just her and I sitting at the table, or just grab it and walk and eat it as we went, because it was like this tiny little croissant thing that we almost always ate, and we got so sick of them by the end. I am yawning because I took a break recording this because Everest was awake and I just worked, and then now I'm coming back and circling back, and he's asleep for the night, so yay. But it is later, so obviously I have to yawn. So anyways, we would walk, and we would leave our what they call piso, which is like basically an apartment, but they seem a little bit bigger than an apartment. They're always hardwood, or they're always tile flooring, almost always. I think always. They just don't have carpet because it gets so hot in the summer. And then we would ride down this elevator, which is basically like a box on wheels up and down. It's so crazy how rickety they seem. I don't know. I mean, not all of them, but like the one I lived in, and then both of the places I lived in were pretty sketchville. But I went into some other places and they weren't as bad, like with other families I knew in Spain. So yeah. Anywho, so we would make our way down from the apartment to out into the park. What did they call that park? I forget in Spanish, but in English it basically was like Pigeon Park or something. And then Pájaro Park, or was what everybody called it, and which is bird, I don't know. So anyways, we left and we would make our way. We'd walk through not winding, but like the streets, and there are lots of tall buildings and alleyways, and very beautiful, very like, I wish I would have had in my iPhone then, and I have lots of pictures, honestly, but I don't always ever pull them out, and the pictures were not that great. It was like with this camera, and okay, anyways, but really tall buildings, and they're all connected. I mean, there were 2 different routes you could pretty much take. Well, there were multiple routes, but the 2 routes that I took were walking along the main street, but it was super crowded when we went to go eat, and there were lots of people in the streets, or lots of cars in the streets, and people on the sidewalks, and it was just really hustle and bustly. And so I would often take like side roads and back roads and stuff. So one route, the main route on those sidewalks, they both took about the same, but the back route, you would walk through several parks and past some coffee shops, so you could grab a coffee on the way if you were early enough, which was really nice. I don't even know if they ever had to-go cups there. They must have, but we were always like grabbing a coffee. We hardly ever grabbed like a coffee because a coffee to go. We would always go there and hang out and get internet or like talk or meet people. So I don't even know. I never saw a to-go cup. Anyways, so because I think about living like where we live now and like just being in the United States, like everybody has to-go cups. Like, people do sit, but where we live and our situation right now, like we did in Texas, but where we live now in South Dakota, it's just not, like we live out in the country, so it's just not, and plus we have baby, so we're not chilling at a coffee shop these days. Whereas we used to just chill for hours and sit there and drink the coffee there like they do in Europe. But yeah, so anyways, okay. I would take some back roads, go past down some alleyways, and I really loved the walk to class. I often had class at one of these other farther buildings than the main building, the main courtyard building. The building that we had, the main building, had like a courtyard in the middle of the university area. So it was like a little park in the middle of the building. And there were lots of plants and a balcony up over, and you could look out. The skylight like opened up the building, like it was the whole ceiling was skylight. It was gorgeous. But the other building was more similar to a regular university, college, school type situation. But the other building walked past candy shops and a little bit more residential areas, and our favorite shawarma shop. I don't know if you know what a shawarma is, but it's basically just like Turkish, gyro type, that kind of food. But that was the first time I ever learned about it, was in Europe, and they make the best shawarmas in the whole world. If I'm being honest, this is a past life situation, but we would always get drunk. And at night, instead of going, like in college, we would go to Taco Bell. I never do this anymore, but this is something that we did a lot of drinking while I lived there, and a lot of drinking in college. And so, anyways, in Spain, when we were drunk, we would go, instead of Taco Bell in the United States, we would go to this shawarma place because it was like super greasy, lamb, so good. So good. So much fun. The guys that worked there were hilarious. Oh my gosh. They were so funny. You were going to have a good time just chit-chatting with them while waiting for your food, while they made your food. Oh my gosh. And we like knew them by name. So, anywho, we walked past that place. We walked past our favorite hookah tea bar. So we would go and we would smoke hookah, which hookah in Spain has no nicotine inside. You could never smoke nicotine, like actual tobacco. That's what I'm trying to say. You couldn't smoke hookah with tobacco in it inside. If you wanted tobacco, you had to sit outside in Spain. But in Africa, we smoked hookah, and I didn't know. I thought it was the same. For some reason, I just wasn't thinking. Okay, when we were in Africa, I was like, in Ethiopia, I was like, oh, it's like, I just wasn't thinking Africa's Africa and Spain is Spain. I don't know. I just had never had hookah before, only in Spain. And then when I went to Africa, my cousins offered me, hookah. And I was like, sure. There was some crazy drug in that hookah when I was in Africa. I thought I was like being drugged out of my mind. Like, I don't know what was laced in that, but it was not just nicotine, and it was just not tobacco. There was some drug in it, but I also had alcohol. I was drinking, like I had a drink, and I did hookah, but oh my gosh. And that was my first real experience with real hookah, because the other stuff was just basically flavored smoke in Spain. Like, there was nothing in it at all. But I was with my cousins when I was in Africa, so I wasn't worried. Yeah. So, and one of my cousins was a local in Ethiopia, so I was not worried at all. Like, I was super safe with them, but I would have been probably worried had I not been with family. Anyways, so be aware if you're in Africa and you're smoking hookah, because there could be crazy stuff, not just tobacco in your hookah. Anyways, so back to my other story. So I'm walking to school and passing all these places. My favorite candy that I got, it was like the watermelon Sour Patch Kids. Oh my gosh, I've tried the watermelon Sour Patch Kids. So Caleb's favorite candy at the movie theater, if you ever go to the movie theater with my husband, his favorite candy is the Sour Patch watermelon kid things. And that's what he would always get as a kid at the movie theater. And so it's funny because I thought that I had never tried it. And here he would always say that's his favorite candy, blah, blah, blah. We went to the movie theater when we were friends, but never maybe when we were dating a little bit, but never while we were married, because it was 2020 by then, and then never since. And so I was like thinking like this watermelon Sour Patch Kid candy just doesn't exist, because I really haven't seen it ever. But now I'm realizing I have totally seen it, and it was in Spain, bro. What? Crazy. Anyways, that was my favorite candy there, and I remember it now. But that's crazy. I had no idea. Okay, anyways, that was a long story. I don't even know if you followed that, but I hope you enjoyed it. So anyways, that was my favorite candy, and I always wanted to stop to get it. They had the best, bakeries right there. You could always get, a really good croissant, a really big American-sized croissant. Everything is so small in Spain. Their espresso, super small. Their pops and their drinks, sodas, very, very small. Like the smallest, smaller than the small in the United States. They're regular drink, and they didn't really have other sizes, just the one size. They might now, and they might try to, accommodate, but the regular size was smaller than the regular small, if that makes sense. So small. And you could not get refills on anything. That was my biggest pet peeve. I remember, not a pet peeve, but just annoying, I guess, a kind of a pet peeve, but it was you couldn't go to the bathroom without paying. You had to buy something if you wanted to use the bathroom. I think I already said that in a different podcast, but I just hated that. And then also, you would get a pop, you would buy a drink, a soda. I think most people say soda, but I'm from the Midwest and we say pop. So you would buy a pop, right? Soda. And then you could not have refills, and it was basically 3 drinks, and then your whole drink is done. It's over. The worst. I remember coming back and I'd be like, oh my gosh, the luxury of living in the United States, free refills. Oh my word. That alone sells me to go to your restaurant. And I hated that we couldn't do that in Spain. I hated that. Yeah. And not having peanut butter. Because I was on a really big peanut butter kick in college. I always had peanut butter, and I always had a scoop a day. But I'm not really like that anymore. I already said that, but I just thought I'd reiterate because, anyways, I was on pet peeves, or not pet peeves, things that I didn't like. Okay. So, yeah, I would love to stop at that bakery, although I didn't stop that often. I chose to do other things. Anyways, so we would go to class. I had maybe 5 classes each day. I took lots of different classes. Every class was completely in Spanish. I took your basic Spanish, like, class. And I took, like, a reading class in Spanish. I took a literature class in Spanish. I took, linguistics class in Spanish. I took like a grammar class in Spanish. So bad at. I took history, I think, in Spanish. I remember being in class, and the first day I'm pretty sure he was gay. But he was so funny. He was like my favorite teacher. He goes, okay, first day of class. What you need to know is your first homework for tonight is going to be that you need to go out and find either a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And you need to begin dating them and get into a serious relationship. And we're like, what? Why? Like, and they have to be from Spain, he said. We were all like, why? And he's like, because your Spanish will increase dramatically overnight. He goes, because you want to talk to them and you want to communicate, so you are going to work hard at getting better at your Spanish, and you'll talk in Spanish all the time. And we thought that was the funniest thing, but there were some people that did, and that it is so true. It's crazy. And now I wish I would have, in a way. But the hard part about that in general is that everybody in Spain is so short and skinny. And I was like tall, and I gained 30 pounds living in Spain, even though I was training for a marathon. So I was running like 10 miles a day, the most I had ever ran, like 10 to 15 on every day I ran anywhere from 3 to 10 average. But then my runs got longer throughout the time, and up 15 to 23 or whatever. So I was running a lot, but I was also eating so much. I think this is another, well, I'll get to what I'm about to say about food. So yeah, you would go to class, and then you would be done by 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and that was when siesta started, was 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So then you would come home, I think it was around 2. We would go home for lunch, and I was honestly always so famished. Like, I was dying because you really didn't eat a breakfast at all, and then you're expected to wait till 2 p.m. to eat. And again, I didn't get really any food that wasn't given to me by my host family. I think later on I started getting smart and bringing snacks, but nobody really ate food in class. Like, it's not like a thing like it is in the United States. And even in the United States, it wasn't too much of a thing, but I didn't care. When I lived in the United States, I would do whatever I wanted, but I was kind of trying to do what was more socially acceptable when I lived in Spain. But I just got to the point where I was like, I just can't handle it, and I am dying, because you get to school at 8, and then you don't eat until 2, and you really don't eat anything in the beginning. So it was just not pretty, because the whole time I was in Spain, I was either fasting, like starving myself, anorexia style, or I was gorging myself. Well, I'm about to get to that. So then we would come home for siesta, and that's when we would eat lunch at 2. And then my host family, I love them so much. But it's just, I don't know if it's a Spanish culture or what. So there was a bad combination. they would feed us lots of carbs every day, always carbs. And it was like an absorbent amount, like overflowing plates of like noodles or rice or whatever it was. And so much. And then you had to eat everything on your plate because it was like socially unacceptable, and they would give you a hard time or they would be upset if you didn't eat everything that was on your plate. So, super bad combination. Like a humongous plate overflowing with food, and you had to eat everything. And then you were starving, so it was good, but then your stomach was in excruciating pain after you were done eating because you absolutely gorged yourself. And then you would have to wait. So you would eat at like 2:30, and then 1 or 2, something like that. And then you would have to wait until 9 to 11 p.m. Sometimes 11 p.m. I wouldn't eat till. Not often. It was mostly at 9 p.m. But again, now you're again waiting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours to eat your next meal. That's horrible. That's so unhealthy. Like, and if that was 7, 8, sometimes 9 hours if you waited till 11, if they waited till 11 to feed you. Ugh, it was absolutely awful. So that's just how they eat their meals. 8, 2, and 9. 8, 9. So, honestly, I remember waiting up one night and we would go out to party, out hanging out with people, drinking, whatever, to the club, to a shop bar, whatever. And usually we would leave by 11 or 12, sometimes 10. And we were like early, like the Americans were like early, because to us, going out at 10, 11 is normal. Like anywhere from 8 to 10 is like, okay, you're going out to party, and then you'll be back by midnight 1, something like that. Well, people in Spain go out at midnight. I think I already talked to you about this if you listen to a previous podcast. If you haven't listened to the other podcasts, I highly recommend going back and listening to like Granada Part 1 and Granada Part 2, because I give you a lot of back story about like a little bit about Granada, so that you have a little bit more context to what I'm sharing than what I'm sharing right now, because it's a little bit, you can picture it better. So anyways, and then you come home, you leave at midnight, and you come in, the bars and everything doesn't close until 7 a.m. So you leave. Most people don't get out till midnight, which I was actually super tired by midnight and 1, and we would often leave at 10 p.m. Sometimes 8 or 9, because that's what we do in the United States. So all the Americans were out early, and they would like be going to bed when the Spaniards were coming out. But we would often try to do what the Spaniards were doing, because that was the culture. So sometimes we would leave at midnight and get home at 7 a.m., which in my opinion is absolutely absurd. Honestly, I didn't do that until I lived on my own, because the family I lived with had a baby, and yeah, that's not a good thing, coming in at 7 a.m. So anyways, but I remember waiting up until 11, and then we didn't leave until midnight. This was like one of the first times I did it, because we ate dinner at 11, and then we went out at midnight with my family, the host family, and I know we stayed out late. I don't know that I stayed up. I think I stayed up till the sun came up, like 5 or 6, and then we went home. But I guess that's out late, so. But 7 a.m., people are maybe starting to go to work. I think people went to work around 8 or 9. Most of the shops open up, so that's when most places open for work, is around that time. Anyways, so, anyways, okay, where was I? Coming home for lunch. Sorry about that. I remember laying on my bed after lunch, just writhing in pain because I ate so much and like forced myself. Both of me and my roommate were just being so much pain, sitting there at lunch waiting. Like we couldn't move. We were in so much pain because we ate so much. And yeah, we just had to sit there until we digested some so we could move. But you couldn't not eat. You had to, otherwise they were like offended that you didn't eat all the food officially, like for real. And then the dad would be home and eat with us of the family, and then he would go back to work around 3 or 5 or 3, anywhere from 3 to 4, sometimes 5. And then we would go out to parks. I would go to like a youth group I was a part of. Sometimes I would work at my jobs, where I would teach. If you didn't listen to the podcast, then you wouldn't know that I taught in Spain. I taught kids English in Spain, as a job. But in my first semester, I did not have those jobs yet, so I did not do that at that point. Yeah. Certain days I went to the elementary school that I taught English at. I think I did that in place of school. It was like an internship. That's what it was. It was an internship. Yeah. Or was it volunteer? I think it was both. Volunteer internship thing. I was getting credit for it, but yeah. Anyways, that was cool. Oh, we would explore the city, go for walks. I would do my runs at that point because I was training for a marathon. What else would we do? We would go, what is that? Snowboarding or to the beach. At this time, we would go to the beach sometimes. We would go shopping. I don't know. I mean, there's so much to do. Go get a ice cream or a gelato. Go to church. I did that a lot. Go exploring. Go get an intercambio. If you didn't listen to other podcasts, an intercambio is where someone that knew a language would meet with another person of a different language, and then they would speak to each other in their native language so the other person can learn, basically. And like what I did is I was learning Spanish and other people wanted to learn English. So we would speak for half hour in English and half hour in Spanish, both of us, so that we could both learn the other person's language. But you could do any language. I talk about it more in a different podcast. So if you want to learn more about that or me explain it and talk about it more, you have to listen to the other 2 podcasts. So shameless plug. Yeah, shameless plug. Shameless. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyways, yeah, so there was like lots of free time at that point. Sometimes, that lisp right there. Sometimes we would have like excursions connected with the university I was a part of, where we would go and we would do tours or go to museums, or they would take us to a historic place in the city. Oh, we would also go explore the castle, the Alhambra. That was one of our tours in the city. We would go sit and view the Alhambra at the viewing place in Granada. a lot. I would go hang out with like friends that I had met in Spain and just hang out with them. Yeah, I mean, there was so much to do all the time. So I went to one bullfight, and I talk about that in the other podcast. Make sure to go listen to the other podcast so you can hear about it and my thoughts about it and my experience. Yeah. Riding the bus for the first time was in Spain, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Lots to do. Sorry with all the yawns. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so then after that would be like most of the evening. We would come home for dinner, anywhere from 8 to 10. We would eat dinner. And then we would basically go out to party every single night. And this is a normal thing in Spain, I presume. It was just the lifestyle we had back then. But it was just kind of the lifestyle of young kids there. And I'm sure not every kid in Spain did that, college kid or whatever, but most. And so we'd leave at around anywhere from 10 to 11. We would leave. There were places called shot bars where you could get a shot for €1, which was super cheap, but the shots were way littler than I realized. But one of my favorite shots, which I don't take shots anymore, just so you know, hardly ever, like never. It would have to be a very special occasion for that to happen. Yeah, just don't do that. I just don't do that anymore. Anyways, my favorite shot, though, there was ones, I don't think you can do this in the United States, at least I've never seen it, was a flaming shot. I can't remember what it was called. The Flaming Irishman or something like that. But it was like an Irish shot, I'm pretty sure. And they literally set it on fire. So, like, the countertop where they make the shots at all the bars in Spain was metal. Like steel. And then they make the shots, and then they would set them on fire. They would turn them upside down or something. No. They would set them on fire and then turn them upside down. And then you would drink them, and they were still like piping hot, and you take the shot. It's hilarious and so cool at the same time. And the shot was super tasty. That was like one of my favorite shots. And then we would just dance and meet new people and go out into the alleyways and meet new people and go dancing and just talk to people. And it was so much fun. The only thing about in Spain is if you let a guy buy you a shot, it basically means you're okay with having sex with him, which is the weirdest thing. And it took forever for me to figure that out because, like, guys would be like, yeah, let me buy you a shot. And I'm like, okay, sure. And they buy you a drink or buy you a shot, and then they follow you around the whole night. And I'm like, that's so bizarre. Why is that a thing? So then I learned to just not let them buy me a shot, or I would clarify, this is not happening. And if they still want to do, fine, whatever. But just so you would know, I know. Oh, we also went to this one bar right where I lived. And a lot of the study abroad students lived in this area, but it was right in that Pajaro Park that I lived at. And there was this bar, and this guy was from someplace super cool. But I can't remember where he was from. Russia? Yeah, he was from Russia. And he would give us free drinks all the time. Free tapas and free drinks. If you don't know what a tapa is, you have to go back and listen to the other podcast. Sorry for all the references, but that's why I made the other podcast, so that this podcast would be easier to listen to, because I'm talking about a lot of stuff that you may or may not understand. It's like it's like math, okay? So unfortunately, you have to enjoy more podcasts. I hope it's enjoyable. I hope you're not listening in pain. So, he would give us free tapas and free drinks, and it was so much fun. It was like our favorite bar. It was kind of like an English bar, and he was like the main bartender. I don't think he owned that bar. One time we got in the car with him, me and one or two other girls, and he drove us to the club. Don't tell my parents. And yeah, he drove like a maniac. He was probably drunk. But the roads are so tiny. Like, he had this little tiny compact car. It was like a Polly Pocket car that, like, it was like a clown car. Like those compact cars that are like paper thin. You know what I'm talking about. Like tiny. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I don't even know what they're called, but they're like, I don't know if they're battery operated. I don't know what they are, but they're tiny. And he drove us up there, but he was driving like so fast, and the roads were so, like, the building, it was just one building on each side, and it was, no kidding, the alleyways were as big as the car. Like, those the tiniest cars you've ever seen, that kind of car. And he was driving like so fast, and the turns were so sharp, and it was like cobblestone. So the car's like bum, 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 like rocking back and forth all the way up. And you're going up a mountain, because the club that we would go to all the time was up in the gypsy area, like way up high in the mountain. This, like, I think we're in the Sierra Nevada or something. Like crazy, crazy stuff. And to think we walked up that entire mountain in like stilettos blows my mind. And my one thing I hated doing that was you were always a little tipsy, if not drunk, and then your stilettos would get stuck in between the cobblestone. Worst decision to ever wear heels. I learned so quickly to wear flats and to never wear stilettos or heels while going to the club in the Gypsy Mountain. So yeah, I think that is going to be... Oh, and then you would come home anywhere from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. So, and then you would start the whole day over. You start school an hour later the next day. So we learned very quickly that we would want to go to bed at like 3 or 4 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. Anyways, yeah. The weekends looked a little different. We had slower mornings with our host families. We could travel on the weekends. Most people went traveling like all over the world, like Turkey and Hungary and Georgia and Wales and all over France and Germany and Africa. I only went to Africa 2 different countries in Africa, and then I went to France. And I took very long trips. I did not do the lots of short weekend trips, although I did buy a trip to Ireland and England and never took those trips because I was terrified I was going to get deported. That's a whole nother story. I never got my visa. I might have to share that story with you because there's some crazy stuff that happened. But I was literally going to get deported a million times. And yeah, anyways. Ireland and England are probably a little bit where I felt like we're more strict than France and Africa specifically. But I went illegally didn't have my visa in France Anyways, that's a whole nother story, but I'm not going to start that story. I'm going to finish today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed a day in the life in Granada, Spain as a college student. And I hope you subscribe and you share this with other people that might be bored or just want to listen to what it's like to live in Spain as a college student. And I hope you follow me on, Georgia Hertzberg on YouTube. Subscribe there as well. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening and on all platforms. That would be awesome. Google Podcasts or Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then anywhere else you listen to podcasts, that would be so awesome. And then follow me at GoTGD on Twitter and Georgia Hertzberg underscore on Instagram. That would be so cool. And leave a review of what you thought about the podcast and share it. Please share it. Please continue to listen. I love sharing stories. I love you so much, and we'll see you next time.